Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I feel like is important, and it comes from the fact that some of you guys ask these questions. And it's kind of like, is it your fault an avoidant won't commit? So the answer is no, absolutely not. It's not your fault that someone's not doing something that you think is beneficial or healthy. Could you be pushing them away? Yes, but it's also part of their aspect as well. Like there are too many variables to put one fault. And so please don't say that it's not healthy and it's not true. It's not your fault. Is there something you're doing that can be adjusted to help them commit? Yes. And I think that's a better way of wording it. And I think it's more healthy to look at things in a reasonable way instead of black and white, because it's not good for yourself, right? Your mental health is very important, and I want you guys to protect that. So no, it's not your fault, but are there things that you can fix? Yes. And so we're going to talk about that today together, okay? There are two sides to this. Avoidants struggle with commitment, but there are ways to make it easier. And so yes, they're struggling, but you can make it a little bit easier so they're more comfortable with committing. However, sometimes no matter what you do, they may not commit. And I want you guys to understand that. Sometimes no matter what you do, it's not going to change anything. However, for the most part, these are things that can help anyone feel a little bit more uncomfortable with committing. And so if you resolve those things, it'll be easier for anybody to commit to you, including an avoidant partner. I hope that makes sense. And so obviously the person that you love, you want them to commit to you. And so we're going to talk about things that make it harder for avoidants to commit. And then in a lot of videos I've already made, we can touch on another time what to do to resolve these things. But I'm going to talk about a little bit today as well. One of the first ones is that you don't ask for what you want clearly, okay? So maybe we can talk about you wanting them to answer your message quickly. That can be the example we talk about today, at least for this one. Let's say you want them to answer your message, but instead, I've seen some patients do this, like couples, right? Let's say we have an anxious, preoccupied wife and a dismissive, avoidant husband. By the way, it doesn't mean anxious, preoccupied is always female and dismissive, avoidant is always male. That's just not true. And you guys know that I used to be avoidant and I'm female. So no, I know that's not true. It's just an example. Let's say he didn't answer her text message, and they're married, but couples still text every now and again, especially like during work trips and things like that. And he didn't answer. And so she might answer, like she might double text, which there's nothing wrong with double texting. Some avoidants don't like it, but they're going to have to deal with it because if you don't answer a text message, people have the right to double text, right? But she might double text ... question mark, right? Like what's going on? What is it? That's not clear. That's not clear at all. No clue what that is asking. But she can say, I don't know if you got my first message, but I'm hoping that you can respond. It's important to me. That's more clear, right? Instead of ... question mark, right? Like, I get it. She's frustrated, but no clue what that means, right? And so asking for what you want in a clear way can really help. So on the flip side, if you're not asking for what you want clearly, it can hurt. The next one is you struggle to find compromise because you feel like you're letting go of what you deserve. This one's tricky because, to be honest, you probably are letting go of some things that you are allowed to have or should be allowed to have in a relationship. And if your partner was secure, you wouldn't be letting go of these things. And so I want to validate you before we talk further. I want you to understand that, yeah, you're going to have to end up compromising some things momentarily, not permanently, so that your partner gets more comfortable with commitment. It's true. I'm not going to lie to you, I never do. However, it should be momentarily. It shouldn't be like that forever. In fact, it should only be very temporarily, to the point where afterwards, maybe a year or two, we're seeing that they're getting more comfortable compromising about that exact same aspect. So, for example, if you want, this one's a good one. A lot of avoidants, they get uncomfortable with intimacy in the bedroom, especially after they fall in love with you, because avoidants, a lot of them believe that intimacy is they look at it from a mechanical standpoint as well as a romantic standpoint. So they see it as two different things. So the beginning of the relationship, it's really easy to do it mechanically because they don't see you as anything, but they don't see it as an emotional investment. They can't get hurt. But especially for male avoidants, intimacy has depending on a lot of factors, but just typically, for male avoidants, it's, there's like a performance anxiety as well. Sometimes it's like fear of hurting you, even fear of not making you feel good. So many things, fear of being selfish. And so a lot of these fears make them completely avoid intimacy when they care about you, because it's a lot scarier for anybody, right? If you are trying to connect with someone in a very vulnerable way and maybe they say, ow, that hurts, right? And they're, maybe you didn't mean to, or maybe they're like, yeah, that didn't feel very good. It makes them feel horrible. And sometimes it can be, a lot of avoidance can be sensitive about things like that. And so, not that you would do that, but that's the fear. And so maybe some of the ways to balance this is to take a break from intimacy. That's typically the best way to do it. But you might feel like you're compromising a lot, because it's like a lot of relationships, they're able to do that. And you're right. And it's scary to take a break from something that's so fundamental to relationships. But over time, it helps them to actually get comfortable with intimacy again in the bedroom. And sometimes you have to compromise something in order to get that, even more so than where it was before. But it's scary because that means you have to let go of what you do deserve, which is intimacy, if that makes sense. But it's up to you to decide. But this is something that a lot of times you might struggle to let something go, even though it will help the relationship. And it's your choice. But that can stop commitment as well, because what happens is they're at a gridlock with their emotions and their triggers, and you're at a gridlock with your emotions and your triggers, and you guys are stuck. The next one is you bring up issues more often than enjoying the present. This just means a more high frequency of arguments. Arguments are normal. A lot of couples have them, but it's also important to balance what's going on in the relationship, and so that you don't always find yourself continuously focusing on negative things, okay? And a good rule of thumb is to see how they respond. If they respond poorly to something, then maybe take a break from it for a little bit, and then when rapport is more built, come back to it. Most patients that I've worked with that are avoidantly attached, after like a year or sometimes months of getting more comfortable with their partner, that issue that used to trigger them is no longer as triggering. And so this is good. It's good, but it's lengthy, and I know that. The next one is you may tiptoe around their triggers in fear of rejection or rocking the boat. And y'all know I always tell you, don't do this. I get a little bit, it's respectful, but you don't want to tiptoe to such a point that you're like struggling and not getting your needs met and they're living very comfortably. That's not fair. You're being triggered, so they can be triggered too. They're an adult, right? I think all of you are above 18 watching my video, so you guys are all adults, right? So this is something that's very important. You can and should make them a little bit uncomfortable with the triggers, because that's how you get better. I'm not saying completely expose them to all their fears. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying you're a person and they're a person. Compromise is part of relationships. And you can't change yourself completely just to satisfy whatever trauma they have. That's not good, right? So sometimes you're going to make a mistake that maybe triggered them, and they're going to have to deal with it. It's very important to be mindful of this, but if you are mindful and you're a kind person and you want to help, so what if you trigger them every now and again? Let them grow up from that fear, because and I'm not saying grow up in an insulting way. I mean that this came from when they were like a baby. And as an adult, it's affecting them. So it's time for both of you guys to start removing yourself from that. And the last one is you complain about what you need, not asking for it, and usually not asking for it in a step-by-step way. So let's say you're complaining, I broke my leg and you didn't care, or whatever it is. Instead of saying that, you can say, I'm really disappointed that you didn't show up the way I wanted to. I think that you were trying to give me space because that's what you would want, but I'm not like that. I wish that you came over and did A, B, and C. Please, next time this happens, and I hope this doesn't happen again, because I'm not going to try and hurt myself, but if I do, please do A, B, C. That's all you need to do, okay? So let's wrap it up. Let's summarize and we'll wrap it up, okay? So if you don't ask for what you need clearly, if you struggle to compromise because you're afraid that you're going to be the one continuously compromising, if you continuously bring up issues, tiptoe around their triggers, or complain rather than ask, a lot of times that can create it a little bit more difficult for avoidance to commit. But is it your fault? No, it's a lot of things that's going on. It's never one person's fault. So no, it's not your fault. It's a lot of things, okay? So I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.